The Pittsburgh Pirates have certainly not done everything, or even a lot, right, but they sure did nail trading Rodolfo Castro for Bailey Falter. That's next on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Welcome to Locked On Pirates, live version here. I'm Gary Morgan, and today we're going to talk about one move Cherington made that has truly been great for this team, namely Bailey Falter. A bit about some subjects I'm kind of tired of hearing about, and we'll wrap with some live questions. So get those questions into the chat, and you're going to be the star of the third segment. So make sure you get those in there since you're here. Now, and I'm sure some of your questions are going to be about some late breaking news here that we got to get to because it just cropped up right before we recorded, and I got to just blow the plan out of the water and talk about it. Now, before we get into the stuff I talked about, breaking news. Carmen Mlodzinski is being optioned to AAA for Mike Burrows, who will start tomorrow night against the Brewers. Mike isn't the guy most of you have been waiting for, but a couple things. One, Burrows has been really good in AAA. 7 starts, 2.51 ERA, 105 whip. And second, well, I may not be someone that breaks news, okay? I try not to play in that realm, but I hear things. And if you pay close attention, I'll usually address things like that before they happen. So if you listened to like yesterday's show or read my 5 thoughts on Monday on Steel City Pirates, you'll see my preemptive explanation of why Bubba might not quite be where you think he is. We'll discuss it more in tomorrow's episode, but for today, just let me say, don't immediately hate this move just because it wasn't the one you expected. Burrows is a legit prospect too. And again, if you want to ask questions, and that's the third segment, I'll go into detail on these in that third segment. Up to you. Honestly, you paint how this show goes. And more late breaking news. Jared Jones will indeed have Tommy John. I talked about that a little bit on yesterday's show as well. And we will, of course, get into more details there. Hunter Barco, it looks like it was a strained shoulder, which is far superior than the dreaded Tommy John that it could have been. But even so, a setback for him. Well, let's get into Bailey a little bit, huh? Last night, Bailey Falter tossed a 7-inning, 4-hit gem at PNC Park against the Reds, and it followed a great start by Keller and Skeens. The difference is, you probably expected the first 2 performances. Bailey Falter was acquired for Rodolfo Castro straight up back in 2023. At the time, it was a promising but frustrating young position player being moved for what looked to be a pretty terrible lefty starter who just couldn't get his stuff past anyone and didn't have the type of stuff that would make you think it was coming. We heard the team talk about his extension, and honestly, I don't know about you, but I laughed when I heard it. Another thing Cherington thinks he's smarter than everyone else about, right? Well, the way he finished 2023, it certainly didn't change any minds. Come 2024, nobody wanted him in the rotation. It was just impossible to see it as something good. 28 starts later, he'd thrown 142.1 innings with a 129 whip and struck out 97. Still not great, but more than serviceable for a 5th starter. All season long, we'd have his name on the tip of our tongue when you talked about young arms coming up or upgrades you might make. He was always the first one out, always the odd man out. Even this year, he's cast out of this rotation seemingly every week while fans imagine the youngsters overtaking him. So far this year, though, he's not just been passable. He's been brilliant. 10 starts, .350 ERA, 54 innings, 1.13 whip. He had 2 stinkers out of those 10 starts. The outing against the Yankees where he gave up 7 in 4 innings, and the Dodgers where he gave up 7 in 4.1. Aside from that, pretty much exactly what you hope for out of a fifth starter. Still, there is almost nothing special about him if you look at his overall profile. Extension is still crazy, 96th percentile. His fastball is valued in the 96th percentile for that very reason. And, well, you saw him break more bats just last night with that four-seam fastball coming in at 92, 93 than most guys who throw 100. He'll never get the appreciation he deserves because he doesn't look like successful pitchers do. He doesn't blow you away with velocity. He doesn't make you look silly with spin. He just puts his pitches in places you'll struggle to make hard contact all game against. Eventually, he runs out of pitches to give. Maybe it's time to stop trying so hard to write him out of this rotation. He still has 3 more years of arbitration, which makes him valuable both for the Pirates and should they ever eventually fill the rotation to the level that makes him expendable, valuable in a trade. For now, Bailey Falter is probably the best trade Ben Cherington ever made here in Pittsburgh. In May, his last 4 starts in May, a .38 ERA, a .85 whip in 23.2 innings pitched, 1 run, a 141 batting average against, 6.5 Ks per 9. Our starters as a whole have now a 2.16 ERA in their last 16 games. Pirates are 4-12 in those games. And they still chose to make a change to this unit. We really should discuss some of those different aspects about Majinski being sent down. I hesitate to do it here, if only because I really kind of want to think it through a little bit more. But just off the top of my head, sending him down as opposed to keeping him in the bullpen, well, it tells you the Pirates still want to keep him stretched out. That's not a terrible thing. It means that he's kind of proven enough that there's something there at least. There's something worth pursuing here as far as the starting pitching goes. I think they could use the help in the bullpen right now, but I also think the guys that they could trade for bats we keep talking about, well, they're dropping like flies, right? I mean, like, you can't trade Jared Jones now. You probably can't trade Hunter Barco if you were going to, which probably wouldn't be smart either. I think it's time to start getting a showcase on some of these guys that are options, like Burrows, like Majinski already had. And if you can sell them off as starters, well, then you get a little bit more out of them than you would if you're selling them off as relievers or long relievers or guys who could start if they have to. There might be a little bit of logic here, I think, is the point. So let's at least think it through before we panic about whether it was right or wrong. I think Burrows is a very, very interesting prospect. A couple years ago, I know he was at the top of my board as far as somebody I was super excited about. The ceiling's high. The floor is relatively high for him as well. He's really got good stuff, good command, knows what he's doing with his pitches. This is a good prospect. Be excited about him. I think he's worth looking at and somebody that we should all kind of be happy is here. The Pirates were always going to have to get creative with how they worked through this rotation and how they used all these options that they had. We've named them all off like they're just figures. But at some point, you were going to have to try some of them. Bubba will have his day. But again, go back and listen to that show yesterday if you didn't. Catch the part about Bubba or read it on Steel City Pirates. Either way, I think I've more than covered why it might not be Bubba right now. He was certainly on track, but his last few starts just not been as clean as you'd like to see before you call somebody like that up. One of the worst things you could do is call a guy like that up into an environment like the Pirates have fostered so far, 2 or 3 starts that look what he's done in AAA, and I think we're gonna start hearing that bust word busted out way too early from fans who like to overreact to 1 or 2 starts from people. Next up, can we please stop beating dead horses? Really? Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out and online shopping and entertainment. Listen, take your wife up to the Grove City outlets and separate for a little while and do your own thing and see where you land on what's left in your bank account. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you just stop managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Also trying to eat a little less. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Hey, smash that subscribe button. Hit me with a like. Share this out to your friends. Make sure everybody can see what's going on here at Locked On Pirates. All right, I'm tired. Yes, of bad baseball, but also some of the commentary on it. I'm bored of beating the living crap out of dead horses. I want to talk today about some of the things that, in my mind, are well established, almost universally agreed upon, and frankly, I just don't feel like having to mention them every time I open my mouth or pound my fingers on a keyboard. All right? There are things we should know. Let's start. And these are comments that come in and they have nothing to do with the subject matter that's being discussed. They're just everyday things that people love to throw out there because nothing else matters but them. Fire Charrington. I mean, can I just ask, who that covers this team at any level has advocated for not firing him? I haven't seen it. Honestly, I'm not even wading into when or if it would actually help or who would replace him. I'm simply saying we all get it. We all agree. Saying it every day, especially after a loss like he directly made a decision that very day to help make it happen, I'm just not interested anymore. Say what you like. Just don't expect a response anymore. I'm not going to lead everything I write or say with it as some kind of prerequisite. Okay? I think we all agree that Ben Cherington probably needs to go. I just don't think there's much point in bringing it up every day. And I'm certainly not going to act like they lost 2-1 and this was because Cherington did X, Y, or Z. Everything this team is because Cherington did something. I mean, you can have that discussion every 2 minutes if you want to. Enough. It'll never change under Nutting is another one. Okay. Well, why fire Cherington then? I mean, if you think it doesn't matter beneath him, why does the GM matter? Why did the manager matter? Why are you watching? This is not to be confused with people simply calling for Nutting to sell the team. Have at it. It won't happen. At least not before the CBA. But have a blast calling for it however you like. This comment, though, enough. There's no direction to head from there in any conversation. If you truly feel that way, I won't go so far as to tell you to quit watching, but I'm for sure all done replying to it. Again, you've left no room for conversation. The truth is, a GM could do a better job here, even with the restrictions working for Nutting provide. Will it ever be enough to bring a World Series? Well, I've seen one team do it with a payroll that wasn't in the top 10. And it was 10 years ago. That's the list. So, yeah, he needs to go. But how many more times do we need to say it? Like, there's still baseball being played on the field, and that's what I prefer to talk about. Move the team. As succinctly as I can put this, how about you kiss my ass? This is my baseball team. And I watch and support them because they play in and represent my city. My grandparents brought me up in it. They watched a lot of bad baseball too. Outside of one glorious year in the 60s and a crazy good decade, I can't believe there are many actual Pirates fans advocating for this. It's devastating for a community, and this team has so much MLB history tied to it. I find it hard to believe MLB would even entertain it. The truth is, there aren't enough major media markets in the country to have all 30 capable of competing at the same level. This is the same for every single league in major North American pro sports. Most of them have addressed the issue. One is still pretending there's a real way out short of legislating it in. Moving the team is about as dumb as the idiots that claim they're leaving the country if the politician they prefer wins. You're not going to do it, and you don't really want this. So stop saying it. And if you do really want it, listen, you're not a fan I'm trying to talk to anyway, frankly. How about MLB has to step in? Well, they won't. Nothing Nutting does is against MLB rules. You may hate hearing that, but it's true. Sure, grievances get filed. None of them go anywhere. I'll remind you, since we seem to forget it on daily. In other walks of life, being accused of something untoward means you've actually done anything untoward? No. You're just accused. MLB has to fix their system. I personally think a cap system. Don't make me add with the floor to my list. I really don't want to do it. But I think that would solve everything. At the end of the day, the system and MLB know damn well they're operating an imbalanced vessel. And they know damn well what that creates. Revenue sharing dollars are not directly tied to player salaries. Never have been, probably never will be, until such a time as MLB can wrangle in spending with a system change. And I mean on the top and the bottom. It's always going to be hard to convince smaller market teams that spending $5 million on a Dominican training facility isn't more valuable than an extra Tommy Pham. A tangent of this one is asking the local government to step in. People, they can't even figure out how the PRT schedule works. Okay? They don't even know how to run buses. They're not fixing this. All right? My favorite one. The media doesn't ask tough questions. Sure they do. Fans just think it should be like a White House press briefing where some journalists from the opposition sit there and ask loaded questions to get themselves on TV. But they don't get answers. They don't change anything either. That's not the job. The job is to ask questions and try to find ways to get them to say something different. It does no good to, for instance, ask, hey, Donnie, would this team be better if Bob Nutting sold or they fired Ben Cherington? You might be at home sitting in a wet spot hearing the question asked, but Don ain't answering it. And if the next reporter repeated it, he isn't answering that either. Then they'd end the post game or presser before the game. Nobody is going to openly say Fam sucks. Nobody's going to openly say they hate the owner. Nobody, bottom line, is going to get got. And it won't be because hard questions weren't asked, especially since for many, hard questions actually equal ignorant questions because you really want them to call them names and whatnot. I could probably go on, but that's enough. I'm just tired of hearing some of the same nonsense. It's unproductive. It's boring. And I just don't know even how to respond to it anymore. Get your questions in here. I've got some starters, but we're going to come back from a break, and that's exactly what we're going to do is start talking about questions. So if you've got them, now's the time. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. I got a good question here from Rachel that I wanted to start with. Gary, who do you think the deepest 40 man out there is? Her guess would be the Dodgers, but it could be somebody else. Boy, it's so hard to say. When you really look at teams and you're trying to look through the 40 man, it's very difficult to guess. It's very difficult to guess which of those players are going to come up here and produce. You can look at some of the top 10 lists or whatnot, but it's hard to fathom how they're going to actually perform once they get here. Like Pete Grow Armstrong was a really top prospect, and I think a lot of us thought he was really talented, but I don't think a whole lot of people thought he was going to perform the way that he is right now. I mean, he's performing like one of the best center fielders in all of baseball. So when you watch a guy like that play, did I expect him to be good? Yeah, but not this good. So, for instance, I can tell you that the Cubs are deeper than I thought they were coming into this season. That's not my fault. It's not my job to watch their team, entirely and see everything. But I thought they were a little bit more thin on the pitching and a little bit more thin on the hitting. I still think they could use a little more offense, believe it or not, but not the end of the world. I think they're getting closer. Then I got here one from Pittsburgh Pete. Guys, just imagine if these dudes could start putting up 3 to 4 runs a game. The pitching for the most part this season has went highly under the radar due to the atrocity that we call the bullpen and offense. The starting rotation has been lights out. It's true, Pete. The offense has absolutely let the pitching down. The bullpen has had rough spots, but I think for the most part, Bednar's start, and he has cleaned it up recently. I know people are still looking at his overall numbers and acting like nothing's changed, but really, since he came back from AAA, he's been a different pitcher. Even though he gave up a couple runs the other night in Philly, or against the Reds, that's going to happen sometimes. Colin Holderman has been a problem all season. No matter how many times they've tried to call him back up or send him down or do whatever, he's really struggled since the middle of last season. So that's a guy that I guess you should start asking, why are we continuing to do this? Let's see. Illogic says, what are some actual differences you've seen with Kelly compared to Shelton? That's a great question. There's been a lot, actually. One is, I think I'm seeing, at least if I'm reading the tea leaves right, a guy who's gotten himself an awful lot more autonomy than Derek Shelton had. They're really allowing him to kind of make some of his own calls. And I can say this, almost no example better than Gene Lamont being here. This is not a Ben Cherington decision. I'm just going to tell you right now. I mean, he may have blessed it, but Gene Lamont is here specifically because Don Kelly is comfortable with him and Jim Leland suggested him. And Don Kelly has a great relationship with Jim Leland and Gene Lamont. So I think this was all Don Kelly. He's certainly not some analytics wonk that we've had in that role before. So it does seem like he's allowing a change there. Don Kelly has sat Tommy Pham just about since he got back, or since he got put in charge. Derek Shelton didn't do that. So either Derek Shelton really thought Tommy Pham was that much better than the other options there, or he was probably told, make sure Tommy gets a good opportunity here. He's going to be good and you're going to do it. And Derek Shelton has pretty much followed that plan for 5 going into 6 years. Don Kelly doesn't seem to be shackled by that. They're letting him make his own calls. He's making some that absolutely wouldn't have happened during Derek Shelton. He's more passionate about getting out on the field and arguing for his players. I think that's pretty clear from his 2 ejections in the first week on the job. And I think we've seen him ride the hot hand when he's got somebody who's doing really well. He hasn't been afraid to keep running them back out there. We're not seeing that, oh, this guy hit a home run, time for him to go sit. Or this guy performed well in the bullpen, let me go ahead and not use him again for a couple weeks because this is the guy that's supposed to go in that inning. I think we're just seeing more gut calls, basically. As far as like, is he making better decisions? I don't know. I think there's probably a lot of people that were deathly afraid when Bednar was called upon to close that game out up 1-0 in the 9th last night, right? Is that the call that Derek Shelton would have made? Yeah, I think he probably would have been back in the closer role a little bit earlier if Derek Shelton had stayed around. But it worked. So, I mean, how do you say it was wrong, right? Honest to God, though, up until really this Philly series, I think you started to see a little bit of the shine come off the rose. But the team was playing harder for them. They were more engaged, and they really were into it. I think at this point, they're so in their heads offensively that it's going to be really hard to break them out of that shell. You almost need a breakthrough offensive game or two to really kind of see what kind of buttons Don Kelly can push, because what's he going to swap in this lineup right now that really gets the juices flowing? Like, who's sitting on the bench that you want to see get a shot? Yeah, right? So how do I judge Don Kelly's performance based on that? I kind of can't. And I do think that overall, his answers to questions post-game are a lot better. They're not just like, oh, he missed a pitch here, missed a pitch there, or whatever. Don Kelly's played the game at a higher level than Derek Shelton did. And I think nobody knows better than him that pitchers make mistakes that hitters miss all the time. So when you just say like, oh, didn't execute a pitch there or whatever, I'm not sure that's fair. And I think Derek Shelton fell to that an awful lot. And he would inadvertently throw his players under the bus when he said things like that, because there were times really a great pitch got hit. You got to give credit to the offense there. That's not about something that the pitcher did wrong. So to say like we didn't execute a pitch there, well, maybe you did execute the pitch. Just maybe your plan wasn't good for where that pitch should be. Or maybe that hitter can do something you didn't scout that he could do. But all in all, it's been great. Let's see. I've got one from a Cubs fan here telling me, will y'all please not trade Skeens to the Dodgers? John, he's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. They've got team control of him for a few years. That's not happening. And I sincerely doubt he would be traded within the division, though. So if you're hoping that he's a Cub at some point, first of all, your owner doesn't like to step up for things like that either. So, I mean, this division could be all yours if your owner would step up as much as his rich ass could. Listen, the game has started. That's all I got for you today. What a really, really fun show today. Thank you for joining me, and let's go Bucks, huh? Let's keep it going.